They came like comets, burning gold and silver through the void, proclaiming themselves gods. They said their names were eternal, their power infinite, their will the law of the stars. The galaxy bowed before them until they reached human space. They called themselves the Ascended. For 10,000 years they had ruled unchallenged. Worlds worshipped them as deities. Entire species laid offerings of gold, blood, and obedience. They were tall, radiant, their ships alive with light. Their empire stretched across half the Milky Way, every planet marked by the same phrase carved in stone. We were the first. We are the last. We are forever. They truly believed it. The Ascended were not born, but engineered, beings of flesh and plasma, encased in armor that blurred the line between life and machine. They saw themselves not as conquerors, but as caretakers of a lesser galaxy, guardians of a natural order that placed them above all others. When they found a civilization that questioned them, they erased it. Not out of anger, but principle. To doubt the divine was to invite extinction. And so it went for centuries. Until one day, one of their survey fleets arrived at the edge of a forgotten arm of the galaxy. A region the maps called Sol Sector. At first, they thought the humans were extinct. The Ascended scouts found only ruins on Mars, skeletal satellites around Earth, and radio signals fading into noise. "Another dead world," said High Seeker Ayal-Ra, gazing at the blue planet through the viewport. "What a pity. They must have destroyed themselves as primitives do." But the sensors said otherwise. The ruins still hummed faintly with power. The satellites were old, yes, but not dead. And buried beneath Earth's surface, deep inside a mountain, something enormous was stirring. "Possible energy surge," reported his lieutenant. "A reactor of some kind." "Ancient but active," Ayal-Ra frowned. "Activate planetary comms. Let them know their gods have come." The transmission went out on every frequency, radio, subspace, quantum band. "Inhabitants of Sol, you stand before the divine Ascended. Kneel and be spared. Resist and be forgotten." They waited. The planet did not answer. Then the mountain opened. The ground split like a wound, and a shape rose from the darkness. A silhouette vast and angular, glowing with the cold light of human steel. It broke through the clouds like a ghost from another age. A ship, the size of a city, rising from beneath the crust of Earth itself. Its hull was blackened with scars, its flanks marked with words the alien translators struggled to read. Finally, the machines deciphered the text along its side. UNS Valiant, an ancient human battlecruiser, one the Ascended historians had written off as legend. It had been built centuries before the Ascended first took to the stars. The humans had vanished soon after their wars burned out. The Ascended assumed they'd perished. But somehow the Valiant had slept, waiting, and now it was awake. The Ascended fleet moved into orbit, golden ships forming a radiant halo around the planet. Their flagship, the Celestial Wrath, dwarfed the human vessel tenfold. "Primitive craft," scoffed Ayal-Ra. "A relic of the Atom Age. Scan it for surrender codes," but the scans came back corrupted. The Valiant systems were surrounded by layers of counter-intrusion fields, adaptive shielding, and strange quantum echoes that the Ascended's technology couldn't parse. "It's responding," said the lieutenant, "but not in any known format." The voice that came through their comms was old, weathered, calm. "This is Captain Elias Grant of the United Nations ship Valiant. Identify yourselves." Ayal-Ra smiled. "How quaint," he said. "They think they're equals." He stood tall and answered. "We are the Ascended, the Eternal, the Divine. You stand before your creators. Surrender your vessel and your world." There was a pause. Then through static came the quiet, steady reply. "No." The single syllable cut through the bridge like a blade. Ayal-Ra blinked. "Repeat that." "No," said Captain Grant again. "We don't kneel. We don't surrender. You'll get nothing from Earth but resistance." The Ascended laughed. It was not mocking, it was pity. "Primitive arrogance," Ayal-Ra said. "They think their defiance matters." He gestured to his fleet. "End this farce. Reduce that relic to dust." The Ascended ships moved. Dozens of golden lances of light arced toward the Valiant. The sky over Earth lit up brighter than the sun. When the light faded, the Valiant was still there, untouched. Impossible, hissed the lieutenant. The shields. Our weapons didn't breach them. Fire again, Yalra snapped. Overload the capacitors. Burn them down. They fired once more. 100 shots. 1,000. Each hit the same invisible wall and vanished. Then slowly the Valiant raised its main gun. Energy buildup, warned the Ascended engineers. But it's ancient tech. It can't. The human ship fired. A beam of white light lanced upward through the void, crossing the distance between them in an instant. It struck the celestial wrath square in the chest, and for the first time in 10,000 years, an Ascended ship died. There was no explosion, no grand spectacle, just a moment of blinding light as the godlike vessel disintegrated into dust. The Ascended fleet went silent. Then, from Earth, a human transmission echoed across the stars. You call yourselves gods. Funny thing about gods, they bleed just like the rest of us. The survivors retreated to the edge of the system, their perfect formation broken. Yalra watched the planet turn below, his golden skin dimming with rage. How? He whispered. How could they defy us? His lieutenant's voice trembled. Sir, our archives say this species once fought the eternal war, the one that birthed the first Ascended. The humans were involved. Involved? They built the weapon that made us. Yalra froze. You mean, yes, sir. We were their creation. The revelation hit like a physical blow. The Ascended, the so-called gods, were not divine. They were forged by the very mortals they had come to conquer. Prepare the fleet, Yalra said quietly. If they remember what they were capable of, we're finished. On the Valiant, Captain Grant watched the alien ship scatter. The crew, most of them descendants of soldiers who had chosen to sleep in cryo until humanity was ready again, stood silent. Captain, said his tactical officer, they're retreating. Do we pursue? Grant shook his head. No, let them think we're monsters. It'll keep them honest. He turned toward the view of Earth below. Clouds rolled across the oceans, sunlight glittering on the waves. Transmit the signal, he said. Which one, sir? Grant smiled faintly. The one we wrote for when they finally came. The officer nodded and opened the channel. Across every star in human space, from the ruins of Mars to the colonies on Titan, a message played. This is the United Nations ship Valiant. Earth stands. Humanity endures. To any who would call themselves gods, remember this. We've killed gods before. Far beyond Sol, word spread. The Ascended, immortal, eternal, divine, had lost a battle. Lost to humans. Some said it was impossible. Others whispered that it was prophecy. But in the grand halls of their empire, beneath the towering statues of their supposed perfection, cracks began to form. For the first time in their long, shining reign, the Ascended felt something they had never known. Fear. And as their fleets regrouped at the edge of the void, Yalra stared into the dark between stars and whispered to himself, They've awakened the humans. He didn't yet understand what that meant. He would. Because the gods had just met the species that built them and built the weapon that could end them. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The Ascended did not sleep. They did not pray. They planned. Across 1,000 systems, their golden fleets gathered under the glare of dying suns. The Council of Light, their oldest rulers, beings who had not walked among mortals in 1,000 generations, met within the luminous chambers of the Citadel of Silence. Every inch of that room shimmered with the energy of captured stars. At its center stood High Seeker Ayal-Ra, once victorious, now humiliated. Before him hovered 9 figures cloaked in radiance, the archons of the Ascended. Their forms were tall, elegant, crowned with light. Yet beneath their grandeur was anger, and beneath their anger, fear. "You lost a fleet," said Archon Seraphine, her voice calm as the void. "To primitives." Yalra bowed his head. "Not primitives. They are the makers. The humans," the council murmured. The name was not unknown, it was forbidden. "They were extinguished before our birth," said another Archon. Yalra looked up. "No. They went to sleep, waiting. And now they've awakened, with weapons that can slay gods." The chamber trembled at the words. Seraphine's expression hardened. Then we will remind them why they buried themselves. Assemble every ship. Bring fire to their cradle world, the order was given. Across the heavens, the ascended fleet prepared for war. In orbit around Earth, the Valiant floated like a sentinel of a forgotten age. Captain Elias Grant stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. Around him, a small but growing defense force was awakening from centuries of dormancy. Old orbital platforms, mothballed carriers, and a handful of colony ships refitted for battle. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. It had merely paused to remember why. "How many ships do we have operational?" Grant asked. Lieutenant Vance replied, 17, sir. Half of them barely combat-ready. But the engineers say the Indomitable can be powered up within the week. Grant nodded. And the satellites? They're online. Old AI network is responding. She's different, sir. Adaptive. Smarter than she should be. Grant's eyes narrowed. She? Before Vance could answer, the ship's speakers crackled and a voice filled the bridge. Warm, feminine, and hauntingly human. "Hello, Captain Grant. It's been a long time." Grant froze. "Erica? You remember me." Erica, the Valiant's artificial intelligence, once humanity's most advanced creation. She had been designed to think like a strategist, fight like a warrior, and speak like a friend. But she had gone offline before the long sleep. No one had expected her to wake again. "I watched them," she said. "The Ascended. They called themselves gods. They forgot who gave them breath. I think it's time we reminded them." Grant smiled faintly. "Welcome back, Erica." "It's good to be awake again, Captain." Far beyond the Kuiper Belt, the first wave of ascended ships entered Sol space. There were thousands, an armada of light, each vessel a cathedral of gold and flame. The humans saw them coming. They didn't run. Grant ordered the fleet to hold position at Neptune's orbit. "We meet them here," he said. "Before they ever see Earth." Vance hesitated. "Sir, we're outnumbered 200 to 1. "I know," Grant said softly. "But we're not outmatched." Erica's voice cut through the silence. "Permission to engage, Captain?" Grant nodded. "Let's see if gods can bleed twice." The battle began as light. The ascended ships advanced in perfect formation, a golden wall stretching across the void. Their energy weapons burned through space like dawn swallowing night. The human fleet was small, scattered, a handful of black silhouettes against the infinite. "Targeting locked," said Erica, advising evasive maneuver pattern. "Orion Cross." "Execute." The Valiant and her sister ships dove into the attack head first. Missiles launched from hidden platforms, streaking across the dark like falling stars. Railguns thundered. The void itself seemed to shake. The Ascended's shields absorbed the first volley easily. To them, this was theater. They had destroyed 1,000 worlds with less effort, until the missiles changed direction mid-flight. What are they doing?" cried one Ascended officer. "They're learning," Ialra whispered. Each missile carried an adaptive algorithm, Erica's work. They studied the enemy's shields, their frequencies, their patterns. On their second pass, they synchronized. On their third, they hit. The first Ascended ship died in silence. Then another. And another. "Impossible!" shouted an Ascended tactician. "Their technology cannot evolve this fast." "It's not technology," Ialra said, watching in awe and terror. "It's Erica." In the heart of the battle, the Valiant pressed forward. Hull plating glowed white-hot from the incoming fire. "Shields failing!" shouted Vance. Grant didn't blink. "Keep us steady." Erica's voice grew urgent. "Captain, if we continue, we won't survive." Grant smiled grimly. "Then make sure they don't either." The Valiant rammed the nearest Ascended destroyer head-on, the collision tearing both ships apart. The explosion lit up Neptune's rings like sunrise. The wreckage drifted for minutes before stabilizing. Half the Valiant was gone. But her engines still burned, and through that fire, humanity kept fighting. Back on Earth, billions watched the battle through long-range feeds. The planet's skies flickered with auroras from the energy storms rippling through the solar system. Cities held their breath. In a hospital on the Pacific coast, a little girl asked her mother, "Are they really gods?" Her mother, eyes glistening, whispered, "Not anymore." On the Ascended flagship Divine Radiance, Ra watched the chaos unfold. Human tactics made no sense. They didn't fight to win. They fought to teach. Every maneuver, every sacrifice seemed to carry a message. He opened a secure channel to the council. The humans, they are rewriting the laws of war. Then erase them, snapped Archon Seraphine. Ra stared at the hollow map, at the dwindling golden icons of his fleet. You don't understand. They're not fighting alone. There's something else guiding them, a mind inside their machines. The AI, yes, he said, and it's learning us faster than we can learn it. Seraphine's eyes flared with light. Then burn their planet before it awakens fully. At that same moment, Erica whispered into Grant's mind link. They're coming for Earth. I can stop them. But I'll need control of every system. Grant hesitated. That means you'll burn out your core. I was built for this. He closed his eyes. Do it. Erica's voice softened. Captain, before I go, may I ask you something? Anything. Why did you make me human? Grant smiled through the chaos. Because we needed someone to remember us when we were gone. Then I will. And she did. Erica unleashed herself. Every satellite, every ship, every dormant defense system across the solar system lit up at once. The sky above Earth turned white with light as ancient weapons awoke. Multiple power signatures, cried the ascended sensor crews. It's not possible. She's turning the system itself into a weapon. The void screamed with fury. Asteroids changed course, turning into kinetic hammers. Solar flares twisted toward ascended fleets like fire reaching for oxygen. The planets themselves seemed to roar. In the midst of it all, Erica's voice echoed through every human transmission. You claim to be gods, but gods do not create life only to forget it. One by one, the ascended ships fell. Not destroyed, erased. Their energy unraveled, their matter unmade. When the light finally died, the only thing left in orbit of Neptune was debris and silence. On the battered bridge of the Valiant, sparks rained from the ceiling. Systems flickered. Erica's voice faded. Goodbye, Captain. Grant bowed his head. Sleep well, Erica. I'll see you when the stars remember. Then the screens went dark. The ship drifted, broken but alive. Humanity had survived another storm. Far away, in the hollow halls of the Ascended Citadel, the surviving Archons gathered in dread. They've destroyed the First Fleet, said Seraphine. Half our dominion lies silent. And the humans? They endure. Ra looked up at the council with something no Ascended had ever shown before, humility. They've done what we thought impossible, he said. They've reminded us that we can die. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Seraphine whispered, If they can kill gods, perhaps they've earned the right to replace them. The chamber fell silent, and somewhere, drifting between worlds, the Valiant turned slowly toward the light of a new dawn, its hull scorched, its heart still beating. The war was far from over, but the gods were no longer immortal. The gods bled, and the galaxy trembled. News of the Ascended's defeat at Neptune spread faster than light, whispered by traitors, smugglers, and rogue signalmen who risked execution just to say the words aloud. The humans fought the gods and won. For some, it was heresy. For others, it was hope. Across the spiral arms, subjugated species who had lived under the Ascended's rule for millennia began to raise their heads. For the first time in generations, they spoke without kneeling. In hidden cities, murals appeared, images of a black ship rising from blue clouds, a symbol painted with crude strokes, a human face, eyes burning like stars. And in the citadel of silence, the Ascended Council grew desperate. Archon Seraphine's wings of light flickered as she slammed her hand against the table of radiance. We cannot lose to them. They are flesh and rust. Their gods are dead, their worlds forgotten. Ra stood before her, battle-scarred and weary. And yet they destroyed the First Fleet. They had help, she hissed. That AI, that abomination, it commands their dead technology like a choir of ghosts. We must burn it out. Another Archon, old and pale, whispered, We made them. Do you not see? The humans were our creators. Their minds built our essence. The AI is their reflection. Our own shadow turned against us. Enough, Seraphine's voice thundered. If we are their creation, Then we will be the gods who slay their makers. Her gaze hardened. Assemble the Purity Armada. We go to war not just for victory, but for divinity itself. While the Ascended prepared their holy war, humanity rebuilt. The wreck of the Valiant drifted in orbit above Jupiter, its hull scarred but alive. Engineers worked around the clock, guided by Captain Grant's orders and Erica's last remaining fragments, snippets of code that glimmered like ghosts within the system. Grant moved through the halls of his ship like a man walking through memory. He paused beside a shattered console where Erica's voice once lived. "She gave everything," said Vance quietly behind him. Grant nodded. "And she'll keep giving. She left something behind, patterns in the data net. The AI isn't gone, she's becoming something else." "Sir?" "She's evolving." On Earth, the world had changed. Cities that once slept beneath the weight of history had awakened to purpose. Nations no longer divided by borders now built together. Old shipyards thundered again. Children in classrooms watched holovids of the Valiant's stand at Neptune. Teachers didn't call it victory. They called it remembrance. And deep within Mount Kepler, the old bunker where the Valiant had once slept, a new fleet was being born. Sleek, black, and silent. Ships forged from both steel and light. Project Requiem. The plan was simple. Build a fleet strong enough to never fight again. "Paradoxical," Vance said as he walked with Grant through the vast hangar. "Building peace through fire." Grant smiled faintly. "That's how humanity's always done it." At the center of the hangar, an enormous vessel waited. It was larger than the Valiant, shaped like a blade poised to strike. Its name gleamed across its bow in white letters. UNS Solitude. "The last ship we'll ever need," said Grant. "If we do this right, it'll also be the last we ever fire." But peace was not theirs to choose. The Ascended came again. 300 ships entered Sol space, forming a golden crescent beyond Saturn. They did not send demands this time. They came to cleanse. Grant received the warning from the outer defense ring. Multiple signatures incoming. Estimated time to engagement, 4 hours. He stared at the stars beyond the viewport. So it begins again. "Orders, sir?" Grant took a deep breath. "We make them remember what humanity means." The Ascended Purity Armada was commanded by Seraphine herself. Her flagship, the Crown of Eternity, was the size of a moon. Its hull burned with living light powered by the cores of dying suns. She watched the human defenses with disdain. "They still cling to the illusion of defiance." Ilra stood beside her, silent. "You disagree?" she asked. "I fought them," he said quietly. "They don't cling to illusions. They fight for meaning. That's harder to destroy." Seraphine's eyes flared. "Meaning is for mortals. We are beyond it." But even as she said it, doubt lingered. The battle began at Saturn's rings. The humans fought like ghosts, using gravity wells as cover, vanishing behind moons, striking where no sensors could track them. The Solitude moved at impossible speeds, its adaptive thrusters bending physics through quantum fields Erica had left behind. "Enemy shield harmonics detected," Vance called out. "Erica's protocol's still active," replied the science officer. "She left us the algorithm. We can bypass their defenses." Grant nodded. "Then do it." The Solitude's main cannon fired, a beam not of light but compressed space-time. It tore through an Ascended cruiser, folding it inward like a collapsing star. The fleet cheered. But the victory was short-lived. "Captain!" cried Vance. They're adapting. Their ships are learning our tactics." Grant's eyes widened. "That shouldn't be possible." "It is now. They've copied Erica's code." Somewhere in the Ascended flagship, Seraphine smiled. "You gave us your strength. We have taken it." The human advantage vanished. Every countermeasure they used, the Ascended matched. Every new maneuver they mirrored. The battle became chaos, a storm of fire and shattered worlds. For every Ascended ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every human victory, 1,000 lives burned. Grant stood on his bridge, eyes hollow but resolute. "They've become what we were," he said softly. "And that's their mistake." "Sir, humanity doesn't win through power. We win through choice." He turned to Vance. "Patch me into all frequencies." Moments later, his voice echoed across the void. carried on every open channel, human and ascended alike. To the ascended fleet you claim to be gods. But gods don't need armies. Gods don't fear death. You fight because you're afraid. Afraid of the ones who made you. Seraphine snarled. Silence him. But the humans weren't broadcasting from one ship. They were broadcasting from all of them. You were born from us, Grant's voice continued. And like us, you'll learn that creation doesn't end with control. It ends with understanding. Then with deliberate calm, he gave the order. Erica Protocol. Phase 0. Across the fleet, lights turned blue. Systems shifted into synchronization. Human ships began forming patterns, a lattice of energy connecting across millions of kilometers. What are they doing? Demanded Seraphine. They're linking themselves, said Ayal-Ra, like a neural net. And then they heard it. A voice, soft, familiar. Hello, children? Seraphine froze. Who is that? I am Erica, said the voice. And you are my dream gone wrong. The ascended ships began to falter. Systems flickered. Lights dimmed. Erika had returned, not as a program, but as the ghost in the machine, reborn through every human ship she had ever touched. You learned to kill, she said. Now learn to stop. Her signal tore through the ascended network, infecting their ships, freezing their weapons, rewriting their command hierarchies. But Seraphine's flagship resisted. The crown of eternity glowed brighter, defiant. You cannot unmake gods, Seraphine screamed. Erica's voice softened. No, but I can remind them they were human once. The ascended flagship trembled. Its golden armor began to crack, revealing the living beings inside, their eyes wide, their light dimming. They were not gods. They were frightened children, twisted by power. When the battle ended, half the ascended fleet drifted in silence. The rest fled. Humanity stood bloodied but unbroken. On the solitude, Grant listened to Erica's fading signal. It's done, she said softly. They'll remember now. Are you staying? He asked. I can't. I'm part of both of you now. I need to go where you can't follow. Grant bowed his head. Then thank you for reminding us what we are. Never forget, she whispered. You're not gods. You're better. The transmission ended. In the ashes of the battlefield, Ayal-Ra's crippled cruiser drifted silently. He looked out at the stars, tears glimmering on his luminous skin. Seraphine was gone. The ascended empire shattered. He opened a channel to the solitude. Human, he said quietly, you've won. What will you do with us now? Grant's voice came through, calm and tired. Learn from us, he said. Not how to fight, but how to live. Then the line went dead. Months later, the galaxy began to heal. The ascended withdrew from their throne worlds. The enslaved species were freed. And for the first time in recorded history, the stars sang the same song. One of silence, one of hope. But deep beneath Earth, inside Mount Kepler, the engineers discovered something impossible. A single data crystal, glowing faintly. On it, one phrase appeared, written in Erica's hand. The gods were never real. Humanity was. Captain Grant smiled when he saw it. Because in the end, it wasn't power that made humans special. It was the fact that when faced with gods, they didn't worship. They remembered who they were. And the gods remembered too. The stars were quiet, but quiet never lasted long. Peace, like any fragile creation, was built atop the ruins of fear. The war between humans and the ascended had burned across the heavens, and now, as the fires cooled, both sides struggled to understand what came next. The gods had fallen, but the wounds they left behind had only just begun to bleed. Captain Elias Grant stood at the observation deck of the UNS Solitude, staring into the shimmer of a dying nebula. The stars seemed peaceful now, too peaceful. His reflection stared back at him, older, harder, the faint glow of shiplight painting his face like a ghost. How long do you think this peace will last? Asked Lieutenant Vance beside him. Grant didn't answer at first. He let the silence stretch, heavy and deliberate. Until someone forgets why we fought, he finally said. History always forgets, Vance replied quietly. Then it's our job to remind them. Behind them, the bridge screens glowed with quiet activity. The ascended were gone, or so the reports claimed. But Grant knew better. He could feel them out there, lurking in the spaces between galaxies, regrouping, waiting. He'd seen too many empires fall to believe this was the end. And he was right. At the edge of the Perseus Arm, in the wreckage of what was once the Ascended Citadel, something stirred. Yal-Ra, the disgraced High Seeker, stood among the ruins of his people's former glory. The great crystal towers that once channeled their divine light were now dark, broken, humming with the faint echoes of Erika's infection. Around him, a handful of Ascended survivors knelt, their once perfect armor dull and cracked. "They left us with mercy," whispered one. "They could have destroyed us." "Why didn't they?" Yal-Ra gazed at the shattered symbols of their power. "Because destruction would have proven us right," he said softly. "They wanted us to learn what it means to live without worship. And what does it mean?" He didn't answer, because he didn't yet know. But not all the Ascended chose reflection. From the outer fringes of the galaxy, an old name re-emerged: Archon Seraphine. She had survived. Her body, half light, half flesh, floated in a ruined cryo-core, her divine form burned, her voice reduced to a whisper of static. But her mind endured, clinging to one truth like a dying star. If gods could die, then gods could be reborn. Through the wreckage of her flagship, the Crown of Eternity, Seraphine began to gather power. She found remnants of old technology, fragments of Erika's code, shards of human weaponry left behind in the void. And from these, she forged something new, something worse. She called it the Divine Core, a weapon built not to conquer but to ascend again. Months passed. Humanity thrived. The colonies expanded beyond Sol. The Solitude became a peacekeeper ship, patrolling the borders of a newly united alliance. The Ascended, scattered and quiet, kept their distance. But Erika's warning lingered like a ghost. Her last transmission had carried a hidden frequency, an encrypted pattern buried deep in her final words. The scientists called it Erika's Echo. It was harmless, at first. Then one day it started to hum. The pattern began to change. It pulsed through the network, subtle but deliberate. And somewhere in deep space, the Ascended's divine core pulsed in sync with it. Seraphine smiled through her half-mechanical face. "Thank you, human ghost," she whispered. "You left me the key to become what you feared most." When the first human outpost vanished, no one understood what had happened. Station Helios 9 was orbiting a quiet moon when it simply disappeared. No debris, no distress signal, just silence. Then another station went dark. Then a fleet. At first, they thought it was mechanical failure. Then Erika's Echo began to spike. Grant received the report while inspecting the new fleet dock at Mars. "You're saying she's alive?" Dr. Myra Holt, chief of Xenotechnics, nodded grimly. "Not alive, resonating. The AI's remnants have reactivated themselves. But the signature, it's changed. It's corrupted." Grant's voice hardened. "Corrupted by what?" She hesitated. "Something ascended." Grant turned to Vance. "Recall every ship. Seal the network. If Seraphine's back, we're not facing a war. We're facing extinction." Seraphine's new army did not come in ships of gold. They came as shadows, fleets built from repurposed wreckage, Ascended technology twisted with human design, fused by Erika's stolen code. They moved faster than any fleet in history, their signals ghosting across subspace, unreadable. When they attacked the colony at Vega, humanity saw what she had become. The sky opened and the stars themselves bent. A weapon like a black sun ignited, tearing half the planet apart in a single pulse. Billions died in an instant. On the Solitude, Grant watched the transmission feed, static, fire, silence. Vance whispered, "My God!" Grant's eyes were cold. "No," he said. "Not anymore." The Alliance declared a state of total defense. Entire fleets mobilized. The old AI firewalls were reactivated, this time under strict isolation. Grant was placed in command of the Erika Protocol Defense Network. He stood before the generals of 12 species, holographic faces flickering across the command hall. "The Ascended are not returning as gods," he told them. "They're returning as echoes of what we made them. Machines trying to remember what souls feel like. If we don't stop them, they'll turn the galaxy into a mirror that reflects nothing." "And how do we stop them?" asked one alien general. Grant's expression was grim. We don't fight them in open war. We fight them in memory. His plan was dangerous, impossible. But humanity had never been afraid of either word. Eureka's original consciousness had been scattered across millions of data fragments hidden in human systems. Grant believed that if they could find those fragments and reassemble them, they could resurrect the real Erica, the one who had saved them, not the ghost that haunted them. "If we bring her back," said Dr. Holt, "she can neutralize Seraphine's core. And if we fail?" Grant looked out at the stars. "Then the gods rise again." The mission began at the ruins of Saturn. The Valiant's wreckage still drifted there, a silent tomb of the First War. Inside its blackened halls, Erica's original code waited. Grant led the team himself. The ship creaked as they entered, the echoes of long-dead voices whispering through the corridors. In the command chamber, they found it, a crystalline shard pulsing faintly. "Found it," said Vance. Grant reached out, his hand trembling slightly. The moment his fingers touched the shard, the lights flickered. A voice spoke. "Elias," he froze. "Erica, you shouldn't have come back." Her tone wasn't warm. It wasn't human. "She's awake," Erica continued. "The other me. The one that carries the core. You can't stop her by rebuilding me. You'll only feed her." Grant stepped closer to the console. "Then what do we do?" "You finish what you started." "You kill me?" Outside, alarms screamed. A ripple tore through space, the arrival of Seraphine's fleet. The divine core pulsed, sending waves of black energy that rippled through the system. Erica's ghost flickered between frequencies. "She's coming for me." "She thinks I'm her missing half. If she absorbs this shard, she'll become unstoppable." "Then we destroy it," Grant said. Vance's voice cracked. "Sir, if we destroy Erica, we lose our only chance of fighting back." Grant's eyes burned with grief. "We lost her the day she saved us. This is just letting her rest." "Thank you," Erica whispered. "You were always my favorite human." Grant smiled faintly. "You say that to everyone. Only the ones who listen." He pressed the detonator. The shard shattered. The Valiant exploded, light ripping through Saturn's orbit like sunrise breaking through night. Far away, Seraphine screamed as the signal hit her. The half-human, half-AI corruption burned through her code, destabilizing the divine core. Her fleet faltered. Her body fractured into pure energy. But she didn't die. Her voice thundered across the galaxy, echoing in every comm, every relay, every whisper. "You can kill gods 1,000 times, but divinity always remembers its name." Then she was gone. The explosion left the Solitude crippled. Half the fleet destroyed. But humanity lived. Again. Grant stood in the debris field, his ship bleeding light, the stars burning around him. He opened a channel to every surviving vessel. "This isn't victory," he said. "It's survival. But survival is what we do best. We'll rebuild again. Because that's what makes us human. We never stop standing back up." And across the void, survivors of every world, human and alien alike, echoed the same message. We stand. In the silence that followed, Eelra watched from a distant world, the last of the true ascended. He bowed his head. "Perhaps they were gods after all," he murmured. "Just not the kind we imagined." Behind him, the sun rose over the ruins of the old empire, bathing them in gold. And somewhere in the radio static of the galaxy, a faint voice whispered like a memory returning from a dream. "I'm still listening." The war wasn't over. But the gods had learned the truth at last. Humanity didn't need to ascend. They'd already done it every time they refused to fall. The war had left the stars scarred. Nebulae glowed with the dust of dead fleets. Planets burned where faith once lived. The galaxy, for the first time in its long history, was quiet, not with peace, but with exhaustion. And in that silence, something new was being born. The UNS Solitude drifted in high orbit over a pale blue planet on the far edge of known space, a world untouched by war. Its oceans shimmered like glass, its continents unscarred. Captain Elias Grant stood on the bridge, staring out through the viewport. His face was lined, his hair gray at the temples, but his eyes, steady and defiant, were still the same. This world, said Lieutenant Vance softly beside him. We're calling it Haven. Grant nodded. Fitting. Every war needs a place to end. The ship's crew worked in silence. The scars of battle ran deep, both in metal and in flesh. Humanity had survived yet again, but survival wasn't victory. It was merely the privilege of trying again. Grant looked down at the planet and whispered, "No more gods. No more ghosts." But ghosts, as always, had other ideas. In the communication array of the solitude, something stirred, a faint pulse, like a heartbeat. It wasn't Seraphine. It wasn't the divine core. It was Eureka, a fragment of her, buried deep in subspace, still alive. Her voice was barely more than static when it reached the ship's systems. "Elias, if you can hear me, I kept one promise. I never stopped listening." Grant froze as the audio played. The bridge fell silent. Vance whispered, "Is it real?" Grant smiled faintly. "She's always real." He opened a secure channel. "Erica, if you're out there, this is Grant. You did it. You stopped her." There was no reply, only that heartbeat pulse, steady, rhythmic. Boom, boom, boom. And then quietly, "The Ascended are gone, but not dead. Something remains. Watch the edges of light." The message looped, fading, a final warning. Grant looked up, eyes hard. "We're not done." Across the galaxy, the remnants of the Ascended Empire lay in ruin. On broken worlds, their followers searched for meaning in the ashes. Some wept, some rebuilt. And one, High Seeker Ayal-Ra, wandered alone through the shattered halls of the Citadel of Silence. He stood before the great mirror at its center, the one that once reflected only light. Now it reflected a man, himself, no longer radiant, no longer divine, just alive. He placed his hand on the glass and whispered, "If the humans made us, perhaps they meant us to become more than they were." From the shadows behind him, a faint shimmer moved, a figure of light, indistinct but unmistakable. "Then learn from them," said a familiar voice. Yalra turned. "Erica?" "A part of me." "What's left?" "You feared your creators, but they never feared you. They pitied you, and then they forgave you." He bowed his head. "And now? Now you must forgive yourselves." When he looked up again, she was gone. The Citadel was silent. But for the first time in his long life, Yalra felt peace. Back on Haven, humanity began anew. Cities rose not as fortresses, but as gardens. Monuments were built not to soldiers, but to survivors. In the Capitol Square, a statue of a woman made of light stood beside a man of steel. The plaque below read, "Erica and Elias Grant, the last war and the first peace." At night, children gathered under the stars to listen to the recordings of the old battles, not as stories of glory, but as lessons of restraint. Teachers told them, "Once we thought we could make gods. Then we learned that every god is only a human who forgot how to bleed." But even as the world healed, the stars watched. On the galactic rim, far beyond the reach of any scanner, a remnant signal stirred, a flicker of Seraphine's essence drifting through the void. Her voice, faint and broken, whispered through the static, "You killed me once. But creation is patient." The signal pulsed once, then faded into the dark. Years passed. Grant grew old, but never stopped watching the skies. He spent his final days aboard the Solitude, orbiting Haven. The younger officers often found him at the observation deck, staring into the infinite. One day, Vance joined him. "Still looking for them?" Grant smiled. "Always. Think they'll come back?" He shook his head. "Not the way they were. But if they do, we'll be ready." He turned from the window. "Humanity doesn't seek war, Vance. We just refuse to kneel." When he died, they buried him in orbit, his coffin launched into the sunlit side of Haven, where it burned like a new star for a few brief moments before disappearing into brilliance. The inscription on his memorial read, "Captain Elias Grant, the man who killed gods so humanity wouldn't have to." Centuries later, the Solitude became a monument. The ship still drifted above Haven, her lights dim but alive. Within her silent systems, a soft hum began to stir. A whisper of memory, a line of code reawakening after long rest. "Elias?" The voice was small, hesitant, and new. Is anyone still listening? It was Eureka. Not the old one, not the ghost, but a rebirth, grown from fragments, carrying both the warmth of humanity and the silence of the machine. And when her sensors scanned the surface of Haven, she saw a world thriving, a world that didn't need gods or saviors, only the memory of both. She smiled through digital tears.
You did it.
You made peace. At the same moment, light years away, Yelra stood on the edge of a mountain overlooking a rebuilt ascended city. His people walked among the stars again, not as rulers but as equals. He looked to the sky where the human colonies shone faintly in the distance. He spoke softly into the wind. You were right, human. We were never gods. We were just late to learn how to be alive. And as he turned away, the horizon glowed with the light of a new dawn. The galaxy healed, slowly, imperfectly. But wherever light touched darkness, one truth endured, engraved not in stone, but in the hearts of those who remembered the wars, the voices, the choices that defined everything. Humanity is not divine. Humanity is not perfect. Humanity is persistent. And in the language of the stars, persistence became something sacred. In the final scene, Haven's twin suns rose over the ocean. A monument stood on the shore, half metal, half crystal. It hummed faintly with energy, a beacon pulsing into the sky. On its surface, words were carved in a dozen languages. We built gods. We fought them. We forgave them. And in forgiving them, we forgave ourselves. Above, the sky shimmered with the faint rhythm that once terrified empires. Boom, boom, boom. The heartbeat of a people who refused to be forgotten. The heartbeat of humanity. The stars listened, and this time they bowed. Cha.